Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to the 15 with me, Hendrik Fourie, my rugby podcast, where I talk about all things rugby from a South African point of view, from my own perspective, and things that interest me. I'm recording from a fairly cloudy Johannesburg today. We're expecting a little bit of rain later, but more importantly, we're expecting a lot of good rugby. Let's get into it. Right then, just first of all, a little bit of general news, and first and foremost, my biggest condolences to the family of Chippy Solomons, the legendary manager of the Stormers, who passed away last week. From my side, all thoughts and prayers to the family, friends, to the players, the team, everybody at the Stormers Rugby Union that was close to Chippy. He will be missed, I'm sure. Obviously, I didn't know him, but he will definitely leave some big shoes to be filled. And all of my condolences to his family and close friends. Then for the Blitzboks, well done to the Blitzboks, who for the first time ever won the Hong Kong Sevens tournament, beating Argentina in the final 35-7. I know that they didn't get off to a great start, but then they obviously turned things around. So well done to the Blitzboks Sevens on a historical win. But then we're moving on to the SA Rugby Under 23 Cup. And if we just look at the log there quickly, the Golden Lions Under 23 team leading the pack there with 3 wins from 3. They're leading the log with 15 points, followed by the Bulls Under 23 with 11 points. Then the Stormers with 5, and the Sharks not looking good with 0 wins out of 3 matches so far and a single log point. I assume that they're playing 2 rounds. So well done to the Lions in following in the footsteps of the URC team. And there's obviously a positive winning culture at the Lions at the moment. So well done to them. This past weekend, we had the Stormers playing the Vodacom Bulls Under 23 squads, and that was won by the Bulls 36-17. So I will say the same thing about the Bulls, that there's obviously something very positive going on there. The players, the squads obviously train with and against each other during the week, and I think that's rubbing off. Same thing with the Lions. They beat the Sharks 57-26. That's not a good look for the Hollywood Bet Sharks Under 23 squad at the moment, and we'll get to the URC teams in a sec. Next up, we're looking at the SA Cup competition. And again, just a reminder that this is a competition for all of the rugby union sides in South Africa that's not playing in the URC. So everybody except the Lions, the Bulls, the Stormers, and the Sharks. And it's heating up to be quite a good competition. I haven't watched a lot of that personally, but hoping to watch more of it as the season draws to an end. Each team they're playing a full round robin, so everybody's playing 9 matches. They have played 6 by now. And if we look at the table quickly, the Griquas is looking strong with 6 wins out of 6. That's really good. Pumas in second place with 5 wins out of 6 at 27 log points. The Griquas at 30 log points. Cheetahs moving up after they win this past weekend over the Eagles with 4 wins out of 6 at 23 log points. SWD Eagles lying in 4th position with 22 log points, and the Boland Cavaliers lying in the 5th position also with 4 wins out of 6. So Cheetahs, Eagles, Boland all with 4 wins out of 6, 20, 22, and 23 league points. So it's going to start heating up towards the end of the season, and it's really great to see that the smaller unions are getting a proper competition, especially as things are heating up at the moment. I just hope that we will continue getting better televised matches from SA Rugby's side regarding this competition. In terms of the results for this past weekend for the SA Cup, we had the Ailing Pumas thrashing the Leopards 85-0. We had the Falca looking in good shape as well, beating the Griffins 68-36. Then also on Saturday, we had the Cavaliers again annihilating the Border Bulldogs 74-5. And then we had probably the match of the weekend between the Cheetahs and the Eagles, where the Cheetahs won that match in George 26-17. So well done to the Cheetahs. And lastly, we had Suzuki Greek was also beating the Eastern Province Elephants, I suppose, 52-9. So things are becoming a little bit lopsided. Nevertheless, all of the smaller unions need to play the bigger unions, even if it's in this SA Cup competition, to give them exposure and to help them assess where they are rugby-wise, and to motivate them to improve their rugby. Then also regarding the SA Cup for the fixtures this coming weekend, we've got Eastern Province playing Border in Nelson Mandela Bay. We've got on Friday also, we have the Leopards playing the Cavaliers in Potchefstroom. I think that's going to be a good match. Then we have the Falca playing the Cheetahs. I think that's going to be a good match again. It's going to be played in Kempton Park. So if you're in the East Rand, go support the Falca there. They're playing the Cheetahs. On Saturday, the SWD Eagles are playing the Griffins at Outeniqua Park. I think that might be a little bit of a lopsided match towards the Eagles, but you never know. And then and then lastly, the Griquas are playing the Pumas, promising to be another great matchup in Kimberley on Saturday, 3 o'clock. So please stay updated, support your local smaller unions. They really need all of the help and support that they can get. Looking forward to some good rugby from them this weekend. We're moving on to the section called Obscure Laws, where I look at some rugby laws that are sometimes misunderstood or not known well. And this weekend, it sort of overcrosses with an incident in the URC match where the Sharks played versus Ospreys, and everybody in SA Rugby would already know what I'm going to talk about, and that is the law talking about players not being allowed to fall on other players. So I'm going to read the law as put forward by World Rugby. It's Law 13.4. It says, players on their feet and without the ball must not fall on or over players on the ground who have the ball or who are near it. A sanction is a penalty. So the player in question here was the Ospreys player Luke Morgan, who after Ethan Hooker got the ball and ran in about a 70-meter try or something like that, was already over the try line, basically scoring the try, and then Luke Morgan dove onto him. He fell onto him. There was no clear attempt to make a tackle. There was no arms wrapping. Everything that could be wrong with it was wrong with it. In the result being that Ethan Hooker dislocated his shoulder and will probably be out of rugby for a few months at least. So that's a tough blow for Ethan Hooker. What was disappointing was that there was no review. There was no on-field review from the referee. And I don't really know what to make of that, because it's clear, it was clear and obvious, and it was worth checking out at least by the TMO. Now, my other question is, let's say it was deemed to be foul play. In a situation like that, what would happen after a try has been scored? Because the sanction is a penalty. So I'm just wondering if there's any referees out there listening to this, please give us a shout out and let me know what would have happened. if it was only deemed to have been a penalty, because clearly they won't give a penalty, they've already given the try, would they have moved up to a yellow card, which I think probably would have been the most obvious sanction to go to. However, as I said, it's clearly against the law, and I think World Rugby needs to have a look at that situation. Then also in the same match, I'm not going to talk too much about it. The Ospreys clearly used the injury law to front rowers to nullify the very strong position that the Sharks were in when they brought on the incredibly strong front row, including Oxenche and Vincent Koch. And they clearly had the overhand. And so it's going to be interesting to see if those Ospreys players will have miraculously recovered during this week for their match next week. But if it's within the laws, it's within the laws. And that's something that World Rugby needs to look at again. The only difference is we were on the receiving side in terms of that laws. But I personally, I'm not a big fan of that. However, I would never ever want to see a non-front rower go into that position and play there in a full scrum setup, because that's asking for permanent injuries. So it's just an interesting thing. We'll get to the actual matches and and what happened and what I think the Sharks should have done in that situation. Right, now onto the big boys, as we would say, and we're going to have a look first at the URC table. And for all intents and purposes, I would say from a personal point of view, positions 1 to 9 are realistically still in the run. From 10 downwards, they've got the Ospreys have got 34 points, whereas Connacht in 9th have got 44 league points. It's mathematically not impossible for one of the lower ranked teams to end up in the top 8 positions. But given the current form of the top 9 teams, it's highly unlikely that any team below 9, Ospreys, Sharks, Edinburgh, etc., will end up in the top of the top 8 of this competition. So let's just quickly do a recap of the table. At the moment, Glasgow Warriors still first with 55 league points, even after their big loss against the Lions this weekend. Second place, the Stormers with 51. I will say regarding the Stormers, and the Stormers and the Lions have got the same problem at the moment, and that is they've got 3 tough matches left, of which 2 of them are overseas matches. It's away matches for them. So it could end up being a bit of a difficult last 3 matches for both of those teams. The Stormers, the Stormers' form at the moment isn't what they want it to be. And that is the worrying thing for the Stormers more than for the Lions. Because the Stormers just don't seem to be hitting the straps when they need to this year. The Lions, in contrast, they are playing really good rugby at the moment. Nevertheless, in third position is Leinster with 51 log points. They're looking in a good situation at the moment. In 5 and 6 is Ulster and Munster with 47 and 46. 7 is Cardiff, 8 Vodacom Bulls, and 9 Connacht at 44. So it's interesting. Even from the second position up until the 9th position is only separated by 7 league points. I mean, that's just a little bit more than a full house for one match. So it's going to remain very, very close for these last 3 matches. And I would hate to make predictions for the top 8. So let's just have a look at the results of this weekend, and we can talk a little bit about that. The Bulls won away against the Dragons 47-7. That was a a very interesting match to watch, because the first half was kind of equal. Both teams are still in it. From my personal point of view, I would say that the Bulls tried to play more with their backline and a little bit of expansive running rugby in the first half. And whether the Bulls sometimes just stumble upon the recipe that works for them, or whether they do it on purpose, only they would know. But their second half was just an annihilation of the Dragons, where the Bulls suddenly started to play their traditional pod forward rugby, just smashing it up onto the advantage line, and just sort of basically murdering whatever comes in their way. So they had an excellent second half. The Stormers, famously now, have lost their match against Connacht in Cape Town 24-33, which has angered a lot of their fans. And it's for a couple of reasons. Firstly, because they lost. Secondly, because a lot of people are saying that Warwick Galant's form isn't what it used to be, and it certainly isn't what is expected of a first-class player at the moment. I don't think Warwick is playing his best rugby, to be brutally honest. But one of the other points of contention, and which I fully agree with, is Damian Willemse on wing. Damian Willemse has proven over and over again that he's one of the world's best centers and fullback. Why you would waste him on a wing just blows my mind. And I think the Stormers fans are rightly angered by that. So the Stormers, as I said a little bit earlier, is they're in a difficult position. That if they beat Glasgow, they will find themselves in the number one position on the log, which is wonderful. But it depends if they're gonna find their mojo on Saturday against Glasgow, which is definitely not going to field the same side that they fielded against the Lions last weekend. Glasgow rested 9 of their top players against the Lions, so they might come with a bit of a backlash this coming Saturday against the Stormers. Lions had an obvious amazing win against Glasgow this past weekend, 54-12. And I will be the first one as a Lions supporter to say, yes, Glasgow rested 9 players from their previous weekend's match against Toulon. However, things sort of cancel each other out, because there were matches throughout the season when the Lions also had to rest players, had a host of injured players, etc. So these things sort of cancel each other out. And I will say that Glasgow, as the number one team, you expect more. Even if it's not their first string team, you expect more of them. And just in terms of their structures, we know Franco Smith, their coach, is really good. So a 54-12 win against Glasgow, even if it wasn't their first selected team, is still very good, because the Lions played good. They kept to their structures. They played with enthusiasm and commitment. And so they're looking better than the Stormers in terms of their current form. I'll say that. And they also play like an actual team, even though they have very few Springboks in it. They're actually playing really, really good rugby. And then lastly, from a South African point of view, we had the Sharks v Ospreys. And again, the Sharks lost 21-17 in a very controversial match. We spoke a little bit about it earlier in terms of the late dive onto Ethan Hooker after he scored his try with a dislocated shoulder. There's enough said about that in media, and also then the way that the Ospreys legally used the rule where they could claim uncontested scrums. So whether they were honest in that, I don't know, but it was legal. Let's say that. So let's have a look at the weekend's upcoming matches, especially regarding the URC. And from a South African point of view, Friday evening, South African time, 8:45. Sharks are away to Edinburgh. I think that's going to be a very entertaining match to watch. Neither of them are realistically in for a chance to make a run at the title. Probably not even the top 8 anymore. But I think it's going to be an entertaining match because both teams will throw everything at it just to try and maybe sneak in to the top 8 later this season as it draws to a close. But I don't think either of them will make it. On Saturday, the first match, 1:45, Saturday afternoon, we have the Stormers v Glasgow. And as I said a few minutes back, I think that's going to be a really, really tough match. I think it's going to be tough for the Stormers. If Glasgow hit their straps and if there's good weather and they can play their running rugby that they like, I think Glasgow is in with a really good chance. The Stormers need to find some kind of emotional balance, I think. There's a lot of external pressure and emotional unhappiness from the fans that's being poured onto the Stormers at the moment. And the Stormers need to find something. As I said earlier, if they win, they end up number 1, log leaders, which is great. If they lose, they might even find themselves out of the top 8 towards the end of the season, because after this match, they've got 2 overseas matches to contend with. And then third match, Saturday at 4:00, still at home for the Lions at Ellis Park in Johannesburg. We have the Lions v Connacht. This will definitely be a different kettle of fish for the Lions than last weekend. Connacht will come full strength. They're still lying at number 9 position, so they've got absolutely everything to play for to try and reach the top 8 at least. And the way that they are playing at the moment, don't be surprised if they end up top 4. They're still close enough to do that. So it's going to be a tough match, I'll say that. Connacht recently has been playing very much the same style as the Bulls, in the sense that they use their forwards a lot, and they play direct rugby in attacking the gain line. There are no frills regarding Connacht at the moment. They just play really hard direct rugby, and especially with their forwards. The last match for Saturday is the Bulls v the Scarlets, and that's also still an away match for the Bulls. That will be Saturday night at 9:15. The way that the Bulls are looking at the moment, if they can keep their shape, their last 2 matches will be at home in Pretoria. So if they can keep their shape for this last overseas match, things will be looking good for the Bulls. So a lot to play for still from the South African team's point of view. And we're looking forward to a great weekend of rugby. All right, lastly, my not favorite section of this, but I think it keeps things interesting and it keeps things entertaining. I am probably wrong more often than I'm right with regards to predictions, but you know what? I don't mind being wrong. I've been wrong many times in my life. I don't mind being wrong. It's not the end of the world, but it makes things a little bit fun. So the first match, Edinburgh v the Sharks. I'm going to give to Edinburgh. I think they need to. They're playing at home firstly, and they need to play themselves into a position where they actually believe that they are a team with potential. And I think with the controversial match that the Sharks had past weekend, the general way that South African teams don't do well in Europe, I'm going to give this one to Edinburgh by 5 or less points. I think it's going to be close, but entertaining. The Stormers v Glasgow. If the Stormers don't sort their stuff out very quickly, if Dobbo stick with Warwick Galant, if he sticks with Willemse on the wing, then I'm afraid things are not looking good for them. And I'm going to give this one to Glasgow by 10 or less. You can crucify me later. Third match, the Lions v Connacht. Connacht is going to come with a really strong game. And as a fervent Lions supporter, my heart and my head still lean slightly towards the Lions. I believe it's going to be a really, really brutal test for the Lions, actually. But I'm going to give it to the Lions by 5 points or less. I think they will just sneak it in. And the last match, Bulls v Scarlets, at home for Scarlets. Just the shape that the Bulls are in at the moment. I think they've won their last 5 or 6 URC matches. I'm going to give it to the Bulls by 10 points or more at least. I won't be surprised if they win it by 20 or 30 points if they remain, if they keep their shape that they have at the moment. Well, that's all of it from me, and I hope that you have a wonderful week and a wonderful weekend. Go watch rugby, talk about rugby, love the rugby. Don't get involved with negativity regarding rugby. It's something to uplift us. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful sport. And it's something that really is good for communities. From my side, hopefully see you at Ellis Park this weekend. Cheers.